Now, we have a change in our agenda. PI is going to have a presentation available before we start the discussion. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. Good evening. I'm going to pick up where we left off last week. And at that meeting, I think the consensus was to continue the project with the current design for the academy structure in the high school, and also to preserve the existing original high school building, and also the connection between that and the previous additions to the high school. So I thought tonight we would just pick up on there and just to move forward a little bit, and then review some options to maintain that 1920 and 1938 section of the building, and look at some of the costs that we had discussed at previous meetings that involve some of the modifications to that building, renovation, firewall, lead process, and just review some of that cost information and just summarize where we are at this point. So I think as we went through and we looked at the options last time, like I said, we talked about moving, we maintain the academy design and maintain the 1920 and 1938 section of the building. And so we're calling this option 3. We just moved ahead from option 1. We had the option 2, and we were deciding whether it was D or A or B. So we just went ahead and called it option 3 to avoid any confusion. So this tonight we're going to talk about option 3, and it's the high school design with the 1920 and the 1938 section of the building. And to continue our format from last time, we have 2 items to talk about here. One is other use other than school district use, and B would be to use it for school use. And so this is the rendering of the proposed design of the high school with the academy structures as we had planned the building. And then the gray portion of this rendering the gray portion is the original high school and the additions that were put on over time. So that's the portion of the building that isn't currently planned to be utilized in the high school program. And we do need to use that building all the way through the construction project. So I'm going to show another slide down with the timeline, and up until the year, until the spring of 2016, we're going to need that building as part of the construction process. So the decision as to for the use of that building, there is some time to make that decision, because that needs to be used for classroom space and for swing space during the construction of the high school project. That's going to be very important to this process, to have that space available as we construct new space and have to move students in and out. And I think you heard that in some of the construction manager presentations that you had when you interviewed them, as they talked about some of the complexity of this project. But the fact that you have that additional space available relieves the need for temporary or portable classrooms on site. So that will be used until the spring of 2016. So here's a floor plan of the building showing the design that we worked through with your administration and your teachers, showing the different academies, which we've talked about several times. And then this red line shows the portion of the project that would be the high school, and then the remaining, this brown area, is part of option A or part of option B, either school use or other use. And here you can see the second floor plan. And this section has 3 floors, which is why this other plan is shown up here. So this is the second floor. It doesn't connect to the high school. It only connects at the first floor. And then there's 2 additional floors on this building. So we're going to review the options and the costs to maintain the 1920 section. So what we're calling option 3 is the current option that that we're proceeding with, option 3, and now we want to look at A and B. And so there's a couple things we talked about in the past, over the several months that we've been working on this project. We talked about the need to put a firewall in if you don't renovate the building. Now, the building at where the high school, if I can go back here. This portion of the project from the red line to the left, the red dashed line to the left, is going to be a fully renovated project. All the codes, requirements, and all the systems in the building are going to be brought up to current codes. In addition to that, we have approved, you have approved this to be a LEED project. And part of the LEED project, which makes this existing portion of the building a little complicated, is that a LEED building cannot share utilities or energy with a non-LEED building. And as part of the LEED submission to the USGBC, we have actually had to delineate a site plan, which is actually the LEED site for the project. And we have to put an imaginary line through here where this dotted line is, and say that this is the LEED site and the LEED building, and this portion of the site is not part of the LEED boundary or a LEED building for the submission to the USGBC, and therefore we can't share utilities. Now, if this building is renovated and is also a LEED project, then this imaginary line disappears, and then you can share utilities if this is renovated as a LEED project. So, that makes just another complication in what you do with this building. So then we looked at this option 3A, and so that one of the issues is the use group. If the use group is different between the school and the other building, there is a need for a firewall, which is a separation, if that other building is not renovated and brought up to the current codes. If it remains a school use, the firewall is not required. Even if it isn't renovated, it's not required. We need separate utilities if it's owned maybe by a private entity or if the project isn't brought up to use. I mean, some of the other uses that were talked about in the past was the use as possibly a community college, a branch for a community college, could be used as a community center, could be used as a library facility. There's a lot of uses that we could look at until the spring of 2016, when you would need to decide what goes into that building once you no longer need it. So then on 3B, we looked at this, if it is school use. Other uses, district education center, and we just put some things on here. I mean, these were not discussed with the board or the administration necessarily, but you know, it could operate as an elementary school, could operate as an alternative school, whether that's some type of a cyber education facility or alternative education, but you could also use it as some other type of school facility. If that is used and the classification is educational, then we wouldn't need a firewall between the building. We only need separate utility metering, as I indicated, if that would be used or as a non-LEED facility. So it gets a little complicated as we try to put some prices in.
Mark, can I ask a
Sure.
question? Why would you need separate utilities for 3A, but separate utility metering for 3B? Why can't you do the metering for 3A?
You could. You could do this, except as long as it was a LEED building. And the only reason we showed separate utilities if it wasn't owned by the school district. Okay, if you owned this and then leased it to a community college, and then you somehow had a utility arrangement. So there's a lot of possibilities here. I mean,
Thanks, that's what I wanted to
yes.
understand.
So just to go through the building to show you what is in that existing building, we look at putting your district education center in there, and your existing district education center is 11,000 square feet. Between this building on all 3 floors, you can see we have 76,000 square feet. Now big portion of this building is the auditorium and the gymnasium that's in this building. But you can see here the difference in the size of the building compared to the building that we're in right now. Actually, we're calling it out at 3.5 stories, 3.5 stories, because there is actually a story that goes partway to another level. So, under here, first floor, just to go through here, we have the auditorium stage is 7,000 square feet, and then the school other uses 27,000 square feet left, for a total of 34,000 square feet on the first floor. On the second floor of the building, the gym, the auditorium balcony, and the other available for other uses 17,000 square feet, 26,000 square feet on the second floor. And then on the third floor, you can see the brown areas, there's 16,000 square feet of school or other use available on that floor. Now, looking at the parking now that we're at the existing building, I think we talked a little bit about this last time. The existing parking spaces that we have on site are, on the high school site, are 640 spaces. What we have currently planned in our design is 755 spaces. The required spaces under the ordinance for the high school are 730 spaces, and for the other use of this facility just happens to be 25. So the parking spaces that we have planned on the site are adequate for this design at 755 spaces. So that just happened to work out that way based on the ordinance. So we're okay parking based on the use of that building. So that doesn't change the parking design that we planned, because there isn't any place for parking around the existing building. It just so happens that there is enough parking, almost, you can see it works out perfectly. It's just sort of very ironic that that works out. So just some of the existing cost information that we talked about. We tried to show a range here because clearly we can do a renovation of this building at the low end to the high end. So we showed a range of construction cost and project cost. So looking at other use of the building, and we're looking at some of the issues with the firewall and utilities and other things, the minimum that you would have to spend to get that usable would be $1 million. And if you renovated the entire building and brought it up to the condition of a brand new building, you could spend as much as $14 million on that building based on the square footage. For school use, you can see we did it as a non-lead and as a lead. To do a non-lead project, which would mainly get us into that firewall, separate utilities, including the separate utilities there at the $340,000 to $7 million. And if you did a lead project and you kept going all the way to the full renovation, it takes you up to about the $14 million doing a full renovation of the building. And that's just driven by the amount of square footage that's in that building.
Before you quoted it's 11 million, what brought it up another 3 million?
The 11 million for, see on there, the 11 million for is the construction cost, and then the 14 million is the soft costs that would be on top of there. The fees, contingency, construction management fees, all the other costs that go on top of it, just the plain construction costs. So we're trying to give you the full package here of what the minimum is and what the maximum could be if you did a full renovation.
Option A has no lead value at all.
Pardon?
Oh, sorry. Option A has no lead value at all.
Yes, we could do a lead on that one also. Yeah, it could really be set up as a lead project too. Now, one of the things, just like tomorrow we have the hearing is on the grant, that application that we applied for a grant. You could also turn around and file for, if we're successful in getting this grant, we could turn around and apply for another grant to renovate that building as a lead project and look at going after grants. So you could also, so those are some of the things that you can start to look at and apply for now that the decision has been made to maintain, or I guess you're looking at the decision to be made to maintain this building. You could turn around and do this as a lead project and apply for a grant on this project also. This could be treated as a totally separate project, even through PlanCon. If you use this as a school project or as an educational use, district office, it's also eligible for additional state reimbursement for PlanCon. There's no more high school reimbursement left, but there is reimbursement for another use.
So Mark, just to clarify, because you had mentioned this last week, so I was a little confused. There is a moratorium on PlanCon.
Correct.
But what I heard you just say is if it's school district other use, the moratorium doesn't apply.
Well, it does apply, except this project was submitted under the moratorium, so we have to, the high school project was
Okay.
submitted.
Got it.
So this building was, not this building, but this building that we're talking about was submitted before the moratorium. We're gonna have to look at that. I mean, it's, so if we put something else into a building that was previously submitted, we'd have to look to see if we could get PlanCon reimbursement on it. Because it's by building.
By bill.
So,
At one point, didn't you say that the buildings couldn't touch to get some kind of reimbursement or to do something?
yeah, if you
No,
do,
this before we talked about lead. I thought you said if the buildings touch, you would have to renovate that.
or put a firewall, if it's a separate use group. So we're dealing with a whole series of different codes here. One is a building code, and if you have one use group, which is educational on one side, and you have another use group on the other side, then you have to separate that with a firewall. And that's when we talked about the firewall. Not knowing what you would do with the other building, we put a price together to put a firewall between it so you could separate it and then use that for some other use, whether it could be an office building or whatever it might be, and put a firewall.
And you got all the permits and everything from Cloverdale Township that you need to start with the high school?
No. No, we had some initial reviews with them, but we wouldn't get the building permits until the final construction drawings are complete. They would do a review of those construction drawings, and they would do a code review. And then once they review everything and make sure it's in compliance with the code and we submit all the paperwork, then they give you the building permit.
And so far, there was no problems with anything?
The initial meetings that we had, we looked at the zoning ordinance and the land development ordinance, and then we would have, they would do a building code review prior to issuing the building permit. So that final code review usually occurs right before we go out to bid.
And that's with the planning? And then it goes back to the township, so,
It goes to the planning and it also goes to the zoning officer and the
Right.
code review. So there's
Yeah.
several people that would review it.
several different groups, but then eventually go back to the supervisors. So how long do you think all this will take?
Well, this, in our schedule for the, are we talking about the high school or the old high school?
The high school, since I guess that's what you're gonna do.
The high school, that would occur as we move forward with the projects. That would occur probably later this, late summer, fall. We would go back to them for,
But you're talking about building October 1st?
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
so we would go out to bid about 4 weeks before we start construction. There'd be a four-week bid period, and before we go out to bid, we would have the final code reviews from the township and also from the borough.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark,
Yes.
where did you come up with the lowest cost?
We looked at the very low just to go, we went through and we said, what's the very minimum that you could do? I mean, that's assuming you're not doing, not doing much to the building at all, but you're just going to use it. Yeah, obviously, yeah, it's very minimum. So, I went back and I said to Jim, rather than looking at the maximum cost, let's also look at the minimum costs. And we looked and said, okay, let's say you're not gonna repair everything in the building, which I think at 92, when you actually did your project, you did some work in there, but you didn't do a comprehensive renovation of the existing building. So if you wanted to, use it, or depending on the use, that would be probably the low end. So you're gonna have to invest at least about $1 million for other use, and probably close, you could probably get down lower just by moving into it, but it needs work. I mean, it does need work. If you get in it for that, you're gonna spend money over time
Right.
repairing things. So it's not like it's not a done deal at $1 million for the next 20 years. You're gonna move into it at the low end, and then you're gonna have to budget money every year to continue to fix things in that building as they continue to wear out. So you're gonna have this constant, ongoing investment in the building year after year after year if you go with the low end. If you go with the higher end on the project, you're doing a comprehensive project, and then you're investing in that building over the long term. So that's a 20-year fix at the higher end.
Okay.
What you're saying is, we're investing in the maintenance in advance if we go with a high-end project.
That's
If we
correct.
don't, then maintenance is gonna sneak up on us.
Right, then you're gonna have to budget money every year to repair and upgrade systems every year. So it might be $500,000 or something that you have to then budget every year to keep repairing things as they continue to wear out. Because the systems in that building are, a lot of those systems are at the end of their life cycle.
Mark, I have a question. When we initially submitted up to Plan Con, did it not include the old building?
I think it probably did. The initial one that we submitted, we submitted the whole existing building, and there was a block of space just outside of the building that we were adding in addition. Because I think you approved it a couple days before it was due, and we had to get a design in, and we didn't have time to meet with your high school administration, so we just did a design to get it into plan. And knowing that we would be revising it, and when we reviewed it with the department, we told them this design is going to change, and they said, that's okay, you got the A and B in, and we know things evolve and change. So it was a very simple addition. I think we had like a 2 or 3 story addition in the parking lot.
Okay.
But we did submit the whole building, so that's why this is interesting, because this whole building was originally submitted.
Right.
Okay. So I think we,
That's why I'm wondering if you're looking at going forward, if you put both of those together. Since it was originally submitted.
now, you have to understand though,
But
even though,
having different construction.
but even though the building was submitted, the reimbursement is carried by the students.
Academic.
By the students that are in that building. So we have now acquired all the high school, the 9-12 reimbursement for your highest enrollment projection 10 years into the future. And in a sense, we've used that already. So if you now move district administration, let's say, into that building, then you get reimbursed on the occupants in the building. We would have to then somehow appeal to the Department of Education and say, well, this was this part of the reimbursement project, and see if that would work out or not. I don't know if it would. We'd have to try that, if that's what you decide to do. Maybe by 2016, when you look at this, the moratorium will be lifted. Maybe.
We can't wait till then to make up our mind.
No, you have to start before that. You'd have to
Do
start.
it now, because
Yeah, you should,
we have to make up our mind now. Not in 2016 when you're done using it.
at least, it takes about a year, maybe 6 months of planning. So you have some time to work with community groups, or depending what you chose as a board, how you want to look at using this building. But you probably need 6 months to a year of design and planning before you are ready to start construction. A little bit of time. So here's just some option 3. Yeah, there's a slide we were at, and I just put some benefits on each of the options. This 3A benefits maintain the entire 1920, 1938 section of the building, and I think that's what we were, what the community is looking to do, maintain the neighborhood presence of that building. It is available for other use or to, and then this, here we were looking at, separate utilities, unless you would have some type of a lease arrangement or some type of how you would pay for utilities. We'd have to separate utilities. And that 835 here at the bottom is the cost to separate the utilities if you had to put a separate service into that building. Once again, unless that's a LEED building, we're going to have to do that in order to keep the high school qualified for the LEED reimbursement and also the grant, which
So when would we need to do the electrical piece in the project?
well, it was by 2016 when we finished construction, and then we submit all the LEED paperwork from all the contractors and everything. Then we submit to the USGBC to get it LEED certified, which we're looking for gold now in order to achieve this grant. And at that point, we would have to then show that we have separate utilities, unless we're tying the whole building back into it.
Which would be when, that we need to know for her question.
At the end of construction, which we're looking
So
at.
would you have to do some work before the end of construction if you're gonna change the service and all?
Yes.
Well, that was a question.
Okay.
When?
About,
He said 2000.
yes.
I know, but that's when it's supposed to be finished.
Yeah, the spring of 2016 is when, and even probably that school year, as you wrap up and you start getting into the building. Prior to that, you would have to decide what you're going to do with the building.
Right.
And then you would have to, at that point, if it's not going to be a LEED building, you would have to have it in the project somehow to separate those utilities before we can submit to the USGBC for the LEED certification of the project. So I would say probably the fall of 2015 would be the latest, or the summer of 2015, that you have to know what you're going to do with this building. Maybe earlier, maybe you want to target earlier than that, but I'm giving you the latest point in time.
On a brochure I got from the district here, they formed a committee to investigate the three-story building. And that committee is expected to report back to the school board by June of 2014. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, that's reasonable. And that would give you about a year of design in order to move forward. So this is option 3B. Once again, maintain the entire building, the 1920 and the 38 section of the building. Maintain the neighborhood presence of that structure. It's available for school use. If it is school use, it doesn't require a firewall separation. The total cost of the non-LEED project is about $275,000. And that's the cost to meter to separate from the LEED high school project. And then if you do it as a LEED project, you're looking anywhere from about $6 million to $11 million.
And the question I guess that comes to mind here is we're going to be using the building for school use during the construction project. So what does that building have to have at that point?
Well, while you're using that building, you're just using it like you're using it now. And so it's grandfathered under all the codes and requirements. So the only thing you need to do there is, just to maintain its operation. If the system breaks down, you're clearly gonna have to fix it in order to keep it operational.
Right, but what you're saying is we're through using that building as a transition academic use building, that at X point in time, we have to either have separate utilities or metering if we want a LEED and all of that. So backing into that, do we have to do work there at the same time we're doing our
you knew what was happening before you went out to bid, we would include it in the bid.
Okay, so that
Okay.
would obviously save some dollars.
That would clearly be nice to know if you knew what you were gonna do when you went out to bid.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not trying to put a lot of pressure on you to decide
Well, I
as
think
part of the
those,
process,
I
but
think those kind of, that information needs to be put out there so that we know what kind of timelines we are under to prove most beneficial as far as cost and,
so based on that, we would need to know prior to October, and if we would need to design something, we would need to know even earlier than that. So I can
Until
put a
October
time.
of this year.
Yes, that's when we're looking to go out to bid. So if you want to try to get whatever you're doing as part of the bids, then you have to start to tighten the timeline. It becomes really tight because let's say we need 6 months or so to put together a design for this project and design all the systems. You start to push it back where we need a decision within the next couple of months, pretty quick.
So what month are you saying you should know by, to be more beneficial financially?
To put it into the project, probably by June, I would say
So
by
then in
June.
June of 2013, not 14.
If you want to put it in the bids that are going out for this project, then you need to know by June.
And that'll save us money.
It probably would be better to do that.
I don't know if it's better, and I want to know if it's saving us any money. It's all about money.
You know, I would say typically it would if you could
Okay.
bid everything together.
Okay, that's all I want to know, thank
The
you.
alternative is, if you're after the bid goes out, would be a change notice, right?
A change order, yes.
Yeah,
And that's-
and they're more expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Or you bid it as a supplemental contract and you could get other bidders on the project, you could actually bid it. Now you could have another set of contractors. More than likely, the people that are on site would be more competitive because they're already mobilized in their own site, but you could bid it as a separate contract. But if you decide now and you can make it part of the project, it clearly would be a lot cleaner going through construction. But that puts some pressure on you to move forward with the decision pretty quick.
unless we slow the entire project down.
But that, we need to do that as an option too.
Right.
So, next is a little review where we were in 3A. And here was the timeline that I had. I showed where we are in May 2013. Showed that the high school project is going to go until January 2016. We're going to use that building at some point, all the way through construction. And then by the spring of 2016, this will be available after you transition into the new project for a new use. So that construction could overlap in there if you were able to get either a bid. To try to get a decision by June or July, I think is pretty aggressive, but if it could be done, or delay the project, it could be good. So here's a summary of the costs again, which we did see, and that's my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions, Mark?
Well, Mark, I truly